Hello, everybody. My name's Ashok Mathur. I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies and the Interim Vice President of Research and Innovation here at OCAD University. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are at OCAD, even in our virtual environment, on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. And also that the territories that we study, that we work upon, even in these virtual spaces, are, if we're thinking of Toronto, is the home of a significant size of a Métis community, and also the largest urban Indigenous population in Ontario, and the fourth largest actually in Canada. So it's something to pay attention to make sure that we honor and acknowledge as we're moving through our day-to-day business, particularly in these times when we're not in this face-to-face environment. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. This is one of my joys, is being able to announce the award for Distinguished Research, Scholarship, and Creative Activity. This is conferred annually on the basis of what we consider to be a strong impact on the broad spectrum of art, design, research, and practice internationally. And the award also recognizes meaningful contribution towards undergraduate and graduate research and scholarly training. And so it is my distinct honor to be able to announce this year's recipient for Distinguished Research, Scholarship, and Creative Activity, which is Simone Jones, who you see before you and behind me in some ways. I'm going to read a brief intro for her. I'm not a big fan of reading these, but I think it does, has value here. And then I want to talk for a moment about Simone's work. She is a professor in the Faculty of Art, an artist whose work is shaped by the intersections of various lens-based practices of film, video, photography, projection, but she also is a very substantial interdisciplinarian, so using sculpture, programming, mechanics, electronics, and her work reflects upon the complexities of relationships between lived and represented experience. And I'd suggest even breaking down that blur to make them a type of one. Her most recent work is called Intercept Call Response. It was a couple of years ago, 2019, a 4-screen robotically controlled video installation exploring the origins of the magnetic core computer memory and her father's memory loss due to the progressive complications of Parkinson's disease, and something that has affected many of us, I know, in my family as well. And so it's beautiful to see work like this being produced that is so embodied and yet so advanced in its technical and sophisticated approaches. Since 2003, which is when she started here, actually as an associate professor of professor of art at OCAD, she's developed a series of robotically controlled projection machines that synchronize camera movement with video projection. And these projection machines reenact the original movement of the camera within the exhibition space to, quote, make the experience of the recorded and live viewing inextricably one and the same. So that is a bit about Simone's work. And just on a collegial and a personal note, I've had the pleasure of working with Simone in administrative capacities through her role as the chair of Senate. And I have to say, never have I had such a joyful experience with somebody who it's very clearly, and I say this to you, Simone, very, very honestly, have at the core an interest in the greater concepts of teaching and learning. That is, you're always looking out for students, what will matter for them, and of course our colleagues. And so it's always, you know, when the inbox pops up and someone's name's coming in, if it's your name, I'm always thrilled to open it. And I'm thrilled to have you here. And I just want to make one more comment. These awards are very important. Next week, we'll be talking to Imini Min as an emerging researcher, and we're also starting the process, of course, for this upcoming year's competition. And we've passed our original deadline, but because of COVID, we're of course extending it. So we'll extend it for 2 weeks. So if you want to, and here's where I get to play out my favorite pun, keep up with the Joneses, then get your application in and the nomination in for Simone. I'm going to now turn it over to Simone to share work and congratulate her ahead of time and look forward to your work. Over to you, Simone.
Thank you, Ashok, and thank you all of you for coming today. I'm so pleased to have this opportunity to share my work with you, and I'm really honored to be receiving this award. I would also like to extend my congratulations to my colleague, Imani Men, who is receiving the Emerging Research Award this year. And Imani will be presenting next Friday. So if you enjoy today, please come back next Friday and hear Imani speak about his work. So just to set the tone, I've prepared a short 15-minute video that describes my most recent work, which Ashok mentioned is entitled Intercept Call Response. But after I created that video, I realized it would be really good for me to provide you with some context on the work that led up to the production of this most recent piece. And receiving an award called the Distinguished Researcher Award caused me to reflect on my practice and to look back at the beginnings of where this work started. So I really hope that you enjoy seeing this context piece. If you're unfamiliar with my work, this should give you an idea of where intercept call response came from. So I'll start with that. And once that's completed, I'll then unshare my screen, get the other video up, and then you'll be able to see the video that's dedicated to intercept call response. So without further ado, what I'm going to do now is share my screen with you. And I was wondering, for those of you who have the ability to go to view and say enter full screen, I would encourage you to do that so that you could get the best viewing experience. So I'm now going to share my screen. And now I'm going to open the video. And I'm going to go full screen. And if you can go full screen too, that would be great. I've been building kinetic projection machines for use in moving image installations since 2000. The whole thing began when I was teaching at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and my colleague Lance Wynn asked me if I could make a tripod that moved on its own under motor control. I said I thought I would be able to do that, and this spawned a multi-year collaboration between us that resulted in the creation of 4 moving projection installations, and set me on an obsessive path to discover how to synchronize moving images with a moving projection machine. But it wasn't just this. It was my interest in the relationship between surface and depth, the screen and space, representation and illusion, and the frame as a framing device that kept me interested in this work and informed my practice for a period of about 20 years. The first machine, entitled Truncated, moved a projector mounted on a tripod up and down in a continuous loop, while projecting a panning image of a male torso. Built using simple components and no microcontroller, the machine used limit switches and a latching relay to control the motor. Initially, maintaining continuous sync between the moving projector and the video was an issue with this work, until I had a major conceptual breakthrough and realized that sound beeps emitted from the video could be used to trigger the motor when it had reached its end of travel. The second machine in this series was built to imitate the movement of a prison searchlight that keeps its sights trained on a prisoner that is trying to escape its mechanical gaze.
Oh, geez. Here we go again. There's gotta be a way out of here.
This machine utilized a microcontroller and an H-bridge to control the movements of 2 motors. Sound continued to be used as a trigger to keep the motors in sync with the video. Exhibited as an outdoor installation at Toronto's Nuit Blanche in 2011, the work also included a live piano accompaniment as part of the overall soundtrack. Constructed in 2006 while on a residency at the Banff Centre, Knock is a murder mystery involving 3 actors. The sound trigger in this work literally comes from the action on screen, as the movement of the camera is triggered by the sound of a knock on a door. As the actors enter the room, the camera pans to reveal who is entering, and it is at this point in the narrative, when the camera is distracted, that the murders occur off screen. This normally ignored space outside the frame becomes an important part of the work, and this imaginary space is literally activated by the sweeping movements of the projection as it moves across the walls and floor of the installation space.
Yes, come in. Who's there? No, what do I do? It's so difficult to know which kind to take. Yes, come in. Ellen, a surprise. Is it? Perhaps you're expecting one of you finding here, all part of the all right, we're waiting. I'm glad you're here. Aha! So I was right. You want to have your cake and eat it too. I am ready to take. Sure. And where is she? Tell me that. So yes, it was good tonight. Somehow I got that. One day, you know a whole lot more than you let on. Alas, you win again.
In 2011, 10 years after 9/11, Lance and I met in New York City to recreate Andy Warhol's famous static shot of the Empire State Building. Our intention was to build a machine that would reveal the building in sections in a continuous pan shot that tilted up from the floor to the ceiling of an exhibition space. We wanted to create a double movement, where a second pan of the skyline would reveal that the building had suddenly disappeared. Shot on 60mm film, our footage captured the building at dusk. This static shot was then cut into sections that were animated to replicate the movement of a pan shot. Creating a second animated sequence allowed us to magically remove the building from the skyline. Exhibited in New York in 2011 and at the Montreal Biennial in 2014, the moving image contemplates loss, but also self-reflexively asserts its own production. In 2013, I embarked on a solo project that told the story of two characters using two video projections that ran in sync with one another. The projections were shown in adjoining rooms, and viewers had to move between the two rooms to piece together the narrative. The soundtracks from each room orally mixed between the two spaces to create an overall soundscape that connected the two narratives together. One of the projections was static and the other was kinetic. The movement of the kinetic projection replicated a zoom shot. I built a dolly track and a projection machine that would move along this track. This movement would move in sync with a dolly zoom that was created by the camera during production. The resulting projected image grows and shrinks in size depending on the distance between the moving projector and the wall of the gallery. This change in size allows the projected image to spatially zoom in to reveal a close-up and zoom out to reveal a wide shot. My work with projection machines is indebted to the experimental film practices of the 1960s and 1970s, when artists were actively exploring the connections between perception, the camera, and techniques of representation and display. A significant shift in my work has occurred with the introduction of narrative storytelling, and I am increasingly interested in building projection machines that assist with the telling of stories as a further exploration of the role that expanded cinema can play in moving image installations. I am grateful to the many curators who have supported this work. Subjecting the machines to the often grueling conditions that gallery exhibitions demand is a leap of faith and should not be undertaken by the faint of heart. Thanks must be paid to the individuals and institutions who have been critical to my development as an artist. I especially wish to thank my students whose questions and explorations have continuously challenged me to keep learning. Finally, I would like to extend a special thank you to Lance Wynn and Hope Thompson, who have collaborated with me and supported me throughout this entire process. Great, so I hope that was viewable and everyone could hear everything okay. So now I'm going to move on to the second video. Was that okay, Ashok? Was everything viewable? Okay, great. So thanks, everyone. I'm now going to share my screen yet again, and this will be the last time, and then we can go to questions. So Intercept Call Response is a 24-minute, 4-screen kinetic video installation that is a portrait of my father, who is suffering from memory loss due to the progressive complications of Parkinson's disease. Intercept Call Response began in 2016 when I became interested in the origins of computer memory, specifically magnetic core memory, and the role it played during the Cold War as a key element in radar technology employed in the distant early warning line. The DEW line was operational between 1957 and 1993. Today, remnants of the DEW line infrastructure still exist, but they are mostly abandoned sites that are off limits to civilians. I began to investigate ways to access these military sites when I became aware of the Canadian Forces Artist Program, otherwise known as CFAP. I prepared an application to CFAP to travel to the Arctic to document Operation Nevis, which is responsible for the maintenance of Canada's high Arctic data communication systems. In my application, I specifically stated that I would be documenting soldiers maintaining the 6 remote data communication system sites between Eureka and Alert. My application was successful. Once I received the good news that I was going to be included in the Group 8 CFAP residency program, I prepared a Canada Council Research Creation Grant to support my work. The grant was successful. In it, I outlined my intention to create a kinetic video installation that included research with the Canadian Forces Artist Program, Baycrest Health Sciences Centre in Toronto, and the MIT Archives in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I am fascinated by the role memory plays in the function of biological systems and how this is reflected in technological systems. Memory helps us to understand our position relative to time and space. We rely on memory to help us make sense of the world. Without memory, we would be lost. We would perceive our environment as confusing and inhospitable. I intended to draw parallels and point out contradictions between the function of technological memory and its biological counterpart. Having access to the remote data communication system stations and the vast Arctic landscape would enable me to gather video images. These images would be integrated into the installation and reflect upon contemporary military and Cold War infrastructure and the power and fallibility of human memory. In order to gather research and collect images related to the function of human memory, I approached Dr. Rosanna Olson at the Baycrest Health Sciences Centre in Toronto. Dr. Olson agreed to allow me to take part in one of her memory research studies, and she allowed me to document this work. I visited Baycrest on 3 occasions with a cinematographer. The first 2 visits focused on my participation in a memory study where a camera tracked my eye movements as I was shown a series of images of faces. I was asked to try to remember the faces. In this clip, you can see a small dot. This dot represents my eye movements and tracks where on the face I look when I am attempting to encode the facial information. The third visit required that I undertake the same study, but this time I was inside of an MRI for over an hour and a half. Images of my brain were taken during this study to reveal what parts of my brain were active while I was attempting to memorize the faces. Finally, my research into the development of magnetic core memory was supported by the MIT Archives. In 1949, no computer existed that could fulfill the requirements of an integrated early warning detection system that the DEW line required. However, the situation was dramatically altered when J.W. Forrester, a professor at MIT, invented magnetic core memory for use in one of the world's first digital computers. This computer was named Whirlwind. In 1949, the Soviet Union successfully completed a test detonation of an atomic bomb. This test, codenamed Joe 1 by the CIA, combined with the Soviet development of long-range missile technology, triggered the need for an increase in North American early detection and defense systems. Although the United States had radar detection stations positioned at key sites along the Atlantic coast, the Arctic was seen as a vast, unprotected area, making North America vulnerable to a potential nuclear air attack. Creating an operable, integrated Arctic defense system was extremely complex and required the involvement and cooperation of governments, the construction of supportive infrastructure, and most importantly, the invention of new computing technologies. The development of Whirlwind revolutionized computing and enabled construction of a collection of integrated early warning radar systems that made up the DEW line. At the end of the Cold War, many of the DEW line stations were deactivated, and as I mentioned earlier, by 1993, the DEW line was closed. The upgraded signal intercept stations that operate today are part of Canada's North Warning System and High Arctic Data Communication Systems. My research at MIT revealed how magnetic core memory enabled radar to be deployed in early warning detection systems and underscored the importance that memory plays in the processing of real-time events. At this stage in the project, I visited MIT to research material about Whirlwind and magnetic core memory that was housed in the MIT archives. I was lucky enough to be able to photograph Forrester's famous Notebook 47. It was within this notebook that Forrester first made mention of his research into magnetic cores, and he speculated on their ability to be integrated into a computer system, thus replacing older vacuum tube technology. At this point in the project, shortly before my departure date, my deployment in the Arctic with CFAP was canceled. Apparently, there were too many requests from artists to visit the Arctic in 2017. CFAP suggested that I choose another site for my deployment. I didn't have much time, but I chose to spend 5 days documenting search and rescue operations at CFB Gander. My hope was that my observations from these missions would serve as compelling metaphors for the activity of searching for lost memories. Most of my days were spent inside of a helicopter, traveling to different locations across Newfoundland. I documented search and rescue exercises on various types of terrain, and on my final day with the team, an actual distress call came in, and I witnessed and was able to document an actual rescue mission conducted by helicopter. This footage was later edited into a 15-minute documentary entitled Rescue, and it was screened as part of the CFAP Group 8 exhibition at the Canadian War Museum. Other footage from the 5-day residency was incorporated into the Intercept call response installation. Because I was unable to journey to the Arctic to document the communication sites, I needed to find another way to incorporate the theme of radar into the work. It was at this point that I remembered that my father had been a radar technician when he was a member of the RCAF in the late 1950s. My father has Parkinson's disease, and he is experiencing memory loss due to the complications from the disease. I decided that my original focus on the Arctic was no longer the main element of the work. I decided to interview my father about his experience of memory loss, and thus the interview and the resulting portrait became the central focus of the installation. Once I'd completed interviewing my father, I was able to create a narrative that wove his story with the images from the CFAP Search and Rescue Residency and my work with the Baycrest Memory Studies. In order to include images of the Arctic and the abandoned DEW line stations in the final work, I commissioned Ryan Mason, a former OCAD student, to create 3D animations of the Arctic stations. Finally, I was able to include the voice of J.W. Forrester into the final sound design of the work. I was given permission by the Computer History Museum to use an audio clip from a lecture that Forrester gave at MIT about the development of the Whirlwind computer. After all of the video footage and the sound design were complete, I edited the material into 4 distinct yet connected videos that work together as an ensemble to tell the story. Each video is 24 minutes long. 2 of the videos are intended to be viewed as static images, and 2 of the videos are projected as moving images. The moving images are projected onto the walls and ceiling of the exhibition space by robotic machines that are programmed to move in a pan and tilt pattern. The moving projections are intended to mimic radar tracking devices or searchlights, and further underscore the metaphor of searching in the work. The construction of the projection machines went through several iterations, and parts for the final machine bodies were produced at OCAD's Rapid Prototyping Center with the assistance of Alda Escarino. This aspect of the work represents a culminating moment in my practice of designing and building robotically controlled projection machines. What year were you diagnosed with Parkinson's?
15 years ago, whatever that is. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your personal experience of memory loss?
How do I explain that? Your memory loss. It's something that creeps up on you. You don't realize that your memory is being impacted by the disease until quite far in. And then you run into a situation where you know the answer to the question, how many years have you, what was the year that you were diagnosed with Parkinson's? Now I know that answer, but the problem is, it's not memory loss, it's memory retrieval. You get to at a stage where you're trying to retrieve that memory to answer that question, and it's the retrieval system that seems to be what is so bothersome.
Hitman 2-3, this is Hitman 2-2, how you read me now? 2-3 has you loud and clear. Out. Hitman 2-3, this is Hitman 2-2, over. This is 2-3, this is traffic. Roger, me and Buzz, Redcon 1 is 5 mics. Solid copy, Redcon 5 mics. Hitman 2-2 out.
There's an emptiness when you can't retrieve a memory, especially one that, there are 2 types of memories. The memories that you know that you have stored and put away, and the memories that appear, and you'll hear people say, "Oh, I can't believe I just said that," and that is a memory that seems to pop up. The other memories are memories that you say, "I'll never forget this day," and at some point in time, if you've got Parkinson's, you do forget it, and you have great problems in explaining that to people. People say, "I can't believe you don't remember that," and you've got no answer. You just say, that memory is not there anymore. You know that there's something going on, but you can't retrieve it, and that can be a little frustrating. Yeah.
So that is it for the videos. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. So maybe we can open it up to questions now, if anybody has any questions. Is that good with you, Ashok?
That's wonderful, Simone. I'm actually going to turn it over to Heather, Heather Robson, a manager at in research, and she can moderate the questions and take us forward. So over to you, Heather, and back to you, Simone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashok. I think we're just going to allow the Q&A to open up as well. And if anyone wants to raise their hand, I see some coming up now, and we will start with Yael.
Hi.
Hi, Yael. Nice to see you here.
Can you see me? I can't see
I
me.
see a blank wall, but that's okay.
Opened up my video, but oh, there. Okay. Oh, I know why.
Hi.
Hi.
That's good.
Really nice to see Simone. In the first video, I think the only piece that I hadn't seen was the knock piece from Banff. I've seen all that other work, and so there's a real memory of having experienced it, and there's definitely the aspect of being in the space and feeling the way that the camera pans along the wall, either along the wall, up and down the torso, or along the Empire State Building and those kind. There was a real visceral relationship to it that was created, which we can't see and feel in the same documented kind of way. So I love the way that you've used that technology to defamiliarize our way of looking, first of all, and the frame of the camera, etc. But I'm really interested in asking about this last piece because of these issues around memory. And there's something that was very kind of both an investigation of memory. There's something that's very emotive about the piece in terms of the way that you're editing it and bringing your own narrative into it. But I'm wondering what kind of relationship you're making between that and these systems of surveillance that that are for these kind of transnational and military purposes that have a very different relationship to our kind of familial memories and all of that kind of stuff. Can you talk about having made that, created those relationships?
Sure, thank you. The prisoner video called Projector, that has two motors, just like the one in Intercept call response, and it has a very similar moving pattern because it's replicating the movements of a searchlight. So in that one, Lance and I really wanted it to feel like the prisoner was being watched. So the idea of surveillance was very important in that work. And especially the very dry humor dialogue saying things like, I've got to get out of here. There's got to be a way to get out of here. You know, we're really on the nose with that. We really wanted to playfully say that anything in the frame is captured in the frame, right? So we wanted to use the prisoner metaphor for that. Even though radar is a result of military research, there's no getting around it. I mean, those breakthroughs in computing technology came about because of the threat that was very present at the onset of the Cold War. I really wanted to use the metaphor of searching. So that's where I really thought the searchlights would work in this case, because what you don't see in the footage I showed today, or maybe you get an inkling of it, is it is emotional. And there's parts of the interview where my father literally is sort of stopped in mid-sentence because he forgets what he's actually telling me. And the searchlights then kind of take over and they fill that void. So in the moments where my dad has lost his train of thought, you are in a room where there's lights moving around you and they're illuminating the corners of the space, and they're going up to the ceiling and casting light on you. You're very much in that space of what I'm hoping people will feel is trying to peer into the darkness, right? That's what these searchlights are doing. So even though they are derived from a military background, I was more using them for their emotional, the emotional response that they could trigger and fill in those gaps that my dad actually experiences throughout the interview.
So more metaphorically.
Very much metaphorically, yeah.
I just want to mention one thing, and then I know there's other people who want to. Last week, I was really taken up with this series that Adam Curtis just put out called Can't Get You Out of My Head. And it's a series of 6 documentary pieces, about 8 hours altogether, which he calls an emotional history of the modern world or whatever. And so he's drawing on all of these historic and horrific political moments, but really also making this connection between the way that these are organized in our heads, and also to some extent the kind of conspiracies, suspicions, all of that get mobilized as well. Anyway, highly recommended, worth having a discussion. Thanks.
If you can put it in the chat, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. And next we have a question from Chris.
My name's Chris. I hope I'm the Chris that you were referring to. Thank you for those videos. It's very interesting. I apologize. This is not a false background. It's my actual situation working on some technology stuff. And it made me wonder, for you in your work, is it important to engage with the nuts and bolts of the technologies and physical computer and hardware tilt and pan stuff, for example, as well as the sort of research creation and artistic dimensions of it personally? I know sometimes a lot of these things require a bigger team and collaborations where you have the computer person over here and the other person over there. How does it work for you when, is that done collaboratively, or do you like to engage in?
Thanks for your question, Chris. It's a bit of both. So I am engaged in physical computing all the time. I teach those things. And I alluded to the breakthrough that I had in the first video where I realized that sound could be used to help synchronize the movement of the images with the machines. So I would not have been able to have that epiphany if I hadn't been engaged in the building. It was a engagement with the actual machines themselves that led me to that aha moment. So I'm a big believer in building the stuff myself. But that being said, I have no problem asking people for help for certain things where I need it, right? So could it be it 3D animation or sound design or even some software stuff. I've asked for help with other people who are really good at software to keep me, you know, on track with what I'm trying to do. So I do collaborate with lots of people, and Lance and I have had a long-standing collaboration. But yeah, I do build. I do everything that you see. I built.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
And we have a question now from Michelle White.
I think you might be muted, Michelle.
I'm just not going to put my image up, if you don't mind. I don't have many teeth at the moment.
No problem. We can hear you now.
Yeah, okay. So mine will end in a question, but it will begin with an observation. And I first encountered the work of Simone Jones when I was on a Toronto Arts Council jury, which for the first time ever was made up completely of women. And we were given, you know, money to award. And we awarded, I think, the majority of the money we had to Simone Jones. And there was a lot of kickback from that because it's the first time that TAP had ever had an all-female jury, which, I mean, you know, that anyway, we'll move on from there. So then Simone became a member of our faculty at OCAD. And I want to comment on the number of people that you thank who are painters. And I'm really have enjoyed watching your work develop from technology and conquering systems and making them work towards what you want, and then building all that towards your vision. And then your vision has encompassed, you know, going from, you know, almost Snow White in the Utah flats, salt flats, you know, amazing video. And then when you collaborated with La Liberté on a piece that really was about projecting color, something new happened for me in your work. And then what I watched happen was the collaboration over the next few years. And I think about the piece you did for the AGO, which for the Alex Colville show, which was, you know, phenomenal. And I thought about you being in the helicopter while you were showing us what you were today and how that might have led to you being able to like realizing what you could view from a helicopter. But then my final point is in the last work you showed us, which I think is, you know, the highlight of your career, you came to the end of it with abstract color. So those are my comments.
Yeah, you gotta love painters, right, Michelle? One of the greatest programs in the Faculty of Art at OCAD. I've been so lucky to be able to collaborate with so many people. And I'm just going to speak out generally to everyone here and my students too. Collaboration can yield so many wonderful outcomes, and collaborating outside of your main area of interest can also yield new things that you never thought you'd discover before. So yeah, I've collaborated with Laura Millard and Colette La Liberté. It's been great experiences doing that. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's important to acknowledge. And again, to go back to Chris, just around, you know, these things are very complex. They take years. Intercept call response was a 3-year journey. And filmmaking by its very nature is a collaborative act. You have cinematographers, you have sound people, you have grips, you have gaffers, you've got it all. So I think looking back now on all of the different pieces that have been made since 2003, I'm just amazed myself by the luck that I've had in the collaborations that I've been able to undertake. And I do find my draw to technology is also around the community of people, many of whom are here today, that support one another. So that's also why I wanted to list Lyft and Interaccess and Charles Street Video and Nerd Night, because these are places where people come together to share information. So I think that's one of the reasons why I'm drawn to it. I certainly love doing it. I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. I love doing it. But I think one of the things I really love is seeing other people do it too, and sharing that information. So yeah, thank you for raising that question. Both of you did actually around collaboration. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Simone. We have a question in the chat. I'm just going to read off a comment and a question from Steve Daniels. Amazing work, Simone. Congratulations. Can you speak to the apparent mass of the machines you have created as elements in these works? They start like wireframes, tripods, become very heavy, massive, End of Empire, and then transparent, plexi in call response.
Thanks, Steve. That's a great question. End of Empire had to be massive because it is in dialogue with one of the largest buildings in the world. So I don't think making a transparent machine would have had a good relationship to that image. It's not to mention Andy Warhol's work itself. So I did some research into different kinds of dolly apparatus, and decided on something that was based on the actual pan and tilt mechanism that was used in the original Star Wars. So if you Google that, you'll get a picture of a machine that very much looks like the machine in End of Empire. It's based on a very old dolly and used in Hollywood. So I wanted to reference cinema, I wanted to reference cinematic apparatus, and I wanted something that had enough weight to it, as you suggest, to really contend with the history of the building, the history of Warhol, and enter into that kind of dialogue. But also the fact that the building disappears, right? Remember, this is something that happened after 9/11, and that idea that something that could be almost indestructible could be not there anymore, right? Like the loss of the Twin Towers was like a huge event. So I'm interested in that contradiction too, that we made a building disappear. And so, yeah, I needed weight. That was really where that design decision came from. In terms of the transparency of the machines in Intercept call response, two things are at play. So one is I myself like to see the guts, and so in this case, I thought it was okay to show the insides, because the production of the projection itself is a little bit a part of the work. Like, it's taking the mystery away. When we think about common cinematic practice, we want the viewer to fall into the story or into the illusion without calling attention to the mechanisms of production. But in this case, the machines were performers in the work, and I wanted that performance to be evident. So you see the lights flashing when it's moving, and you know when it's doing its thing. But at the same time, I didn't want it to have the same kind of heft as End of Empire. So making it transparent was a way of stripping it away a little bit so that you could fall in, if you wanted to, the illusion that was created in that space. So it had a kind of a double function there. On the one hand, I wanted people to be able to see, hey, where are these lights coming from? Oh my God, they're being made by these things. And then on the other hand, if you didn't want to pay attention to that, it could fall away and you would just be in the space of the projection itself.
Thanks, Simone. There's a couple of comments. I'm not, I don't know if I won't read through them all now, but we just got about another minute if there's any more questions. And obviously the chat will be available, Simone, that we can share with you afterwards. So we'll share the great comments from everyone.
Would it be all right if we gave a round of applause? Because we didn't get to do that, which we would do. So maybe just before we exit, I think that the work deserves it. And if we were live, we'd be applauding you. Without a doubt. And it would be a standing ovation.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. I'm just wondering if Lance is here, because if he is, he should show himself. Are you here today, Lance? Yeah, I see you there. Turn on your camera and say hi. There he is. He's waving.
So nice to see you.
This is Lance, everybody. The mad genius and a really good close friend.
I would agree with the applause. Love to see that last piece. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. You guys are great.
Thank you, Simone. I love you. Yay.
Steady.
Great talk, Simone. Thank you.
Couldn't have done it without the community of support that I really luckily enjoy. Thank you to all of you. And thank you for coming. It means a lot.
Bye-bye. And thank
Bye-bye.
you for your invitation, dear. See you. Bye-bye.
I think it's going to be on the OCAD YouTube channel.
Yes, absolutely. We'll post it as soon as possible. Thank you so much, Simone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Ashok.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Tony.
Good work. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Simone.